Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Brian.
Yes.
Janine, is there a way to turn up the owl?
The volume, maybe?
Yeah, it's hard to hear it over here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started, calling the meeting to order. I believe we've got enough participants. I believe the last minute we were scrambling to get coverage on the Zoom. And we weren't, I had forgotten to start the video, so we don't actually have meeting minutes from the last meeting, and I don't think that we actually ever will, so we're just gonna do without. And so that moves us, oh wait, we need to open up comments from members of the public. We have any, this is regarding items not on the agenda, but within YoloTD's purview. Do we have anybody online wishes to make a comment?
No public comments online.
We have no public comment. That brings us to agenda item number 3, federal regional funding round coordination. So there's no staff report that accompanies this. The purpose of this item is just to recognize that the federal funding round is coming up this spring with SACOG, and just sort of gauging the extent of interest in, member agencies in Yolo County coordinating on at any level of any type in preparation for that funding round, even if it's just kind of information sharing. So the idea here was I have had some conversations with SACOG staff and also with Sacramento Transportation Authority, and STA is doing, some types of coordination to be strategic about their approach to the federal funding round, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to follow in their shoes. It just means that, it's an opportunity if we wanted to take it. I imagine that what I would propose doing is at forthcoming TAC meetings, that we would simply just perhaps share which programs we intended to apply for and for which projects. So unless there's a deeper interest in coordinating more strategically than that, then that's what I would propose doing. So I'll leave it there, open it up for any questions. This doesn't need to be a lengthy item. It's just sort of gauging everyone's pulse on this topic. So open the floor up to anybody who has any comments or questions. We have none? Okay. We'll leave it there then. So the other thing that I did want to mention is that we do have Caltrans, and just going through the agenda, Autumn will be taking on the agenda item number 4, transit operator RFP review. We also have a presentation from Caltrans regarding their freight mobility plan. So just kind of walking through the agenda there. I guess that brings us to agenda item number 4. And Autumn, that would be yours to take away.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Hey, everyone, good to be with you today. We've got a slide deck here that Janine has brought up. I did email it around just before the meeting started, so hopefully you've got it in your inboxes. Did everybody receive that email?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, and you guys can hear me okay, I guess?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, we'll go ahead and jump in then. So yeah, the agenda item here is all about our new transit operations contract. Like many small transit agencies, present company excluded, assuming Jeff and Unitrans are here. We primarily contract out our operations, our transit operations, to a third-party vendor. And that is a contract that comes up every once in a while. And so we're gonna this is the first time we've actually done it since I started. And so I wanted to kind of walk you through our approach and what how we're proposing to go about re-procuring a new contract and get your feedback and answer any questions that you have about it. So, sorry, can you go forward?
Yeah. Just didn't match,
Oh, is it not math? Is it not Michelle?
yeah, but.
Are you, did I send you the wrong one? Oh, okay, I think this looks right.
Yeah, I put background.
That's fine, that works.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So anyway, by way of background, yeah, all of our transit services are operated under contract. Our current contract with Transdev dates to 2018. And having a contract this old is pretty unusual. This was even back then, this was a kind of a very unusually long contract. And it does create some challenges, particularly because of we're very much out of alignment with the labor market. And our services and operational needs have really shifted. In particular, we're doing a lot more sort of microtransit, and when we've scaled back and reduced our fixed route service relative to where we were in 2018, and microtransit was just like an option in this contract. It was not a core part of it. Also, technology has changed a lot. Our fare payments, just a number of the systems that we use for operations have changed quite a bit. So we did do a 1-year extension. This contract actually gives us another like 5 years of extensions, but we did do one year, additional year extension, and that is set to expire July 31st of 2026. So we're working to have a new contract in place by then. In terms of our approach, it's doing a weird thing.
Yeah.
Just go back one. There we go. So we did decide to do a comprehensive update to really take a big step back. And to see, the world has changed a lot, and also what are the industry best practices when it comes to these contracts. I mean, one of the things that was a bit unique about the current contract is we've actually had the same contractor, Transdev or predecessor, for a very long time. And I think that some of the things that were in our current contract were very much reflective of a contractor with whom there was a long-standing relationship. And so we really wanted to have this be something that would have appeal to a broader range of contractors out there, so that we have more options and have something that's a bit more standardized, if you will. And also, so a shorter contract duration, we're looking at a total of 5 years, so 2 base years and 3 option years. So a much shorter duration for this contract. We wanted to keep what's working because there are some things about our current contract that are helpful, but then borrow from other, particularly more recent procurements to address some of the known problem areas that we have. And we also hired a consulting bench of retired transit agency executives to advise us, because nobody here on the leadership team was a part of the last procurement in 2018. Next slide. So I want to say a bit about the process and the timeline, including, what the roles are for members of the PAC. So as I sort of alluded to, it is a lengthy process. It can be close to a year-long process. Some agencies take over a year to do it. We're trying to pare it down to about 9 months. So we'll be bringing the RFP to the board on November 17th. She's coming up here in a couple of weeks. And then assuming that we have their blessing, we want to get it out right away and have proposals due in February with some of the intervening steps there identified in the table. We want to award the contract in April at our April 13th board meeting and have a notice to proceed a week later. And that allows for essentially a 90-day startup and mobilization period. Assuming that we don't have the same contractor, then it's necessary to have this kind of lengthy period of time to allow for everything to kind of shift over from one contractor to another. Next slide. So roles and responsibilies. staff and consulting team, we are the ones who prepared the RFP. We're close. We're still working on kind of nailing down a few things with the RFP, but it's largely complete. So the staff, and it's the way it is it's really staff that are doing the work. I'm project managing this personally with support from Daisy and Courtney on the transit operations team. So we're sort of doing everything, and we're using our consultants as advisors, although there are some more technical, particularly like financial analysis tasks that they're going to be doing for us because they have more experience than we do. And that's that fourth bullet point you see under staff and consultants. This is technical analysis of bids received. So we're preparing RFP, managing the process, and facilitating an evaluation panel. For the TAC and CAC, we have you providing input here today on the RFP and the process prior to board approval. And then we want to put together an evaluation panel, which is going to hopefully include several of you. And I know I've talked to your city managers already about this, and hopefully word of that has also come to you. If you've been volunteered to serve on this evaluation panel, but the role of the panel will be to review and score proposals, interview the proposers, and then make a recommendation to the board of directors. And then the board itself the role is to approve the release of the RFP this November. And I should say they did already have a board workshop last month to just kind of get some of their high level feedback. And then they also approve the selected proposer and award the contract in April, and then hear any bid protests and make rulings as needed. So if there are appeals about the process, those appeals will go to the board. Next slide. Yeah, so for the proposed evaluation panel, we didn't want to have it be totally unmanageable in size. So we're trying to have it be a somewhat reasonably sized panel with an odd number of seats so that in case there's disagreement that we can have a majority vote if needed. So I'm proposing that the voting members would be myself, representatives from the cities of Davis, West Sacramento, and Woodland, but Yuba Sutter Transit and Unitrans as our two kind of nearest counterpart agencies that are similar in size. And Yuba Sutter, like us, contracts out their transit operations. Of course, Unitrans does not, but clearly Unitrans and YoloTD work closely together and they have a lot of insight about what our needs are. And then SACOG as our regional transit convener and funder. And then finally, we've recommended, and our CAC is voting tonight, we've suggested that they may want to appoint a non-voting representative to the committee to offer feedback as well. So I'm going to keep going through this presentation, y'all, but if you do want to interrupt me and ask questions at any time, please do. Otherwise, we'll take questions at the end, but don't hesitate to interrupt if you need to. So priorities for this new contract. We put together a list of priorities, and these were presented to the board last month. And I put an asterisk next to the ones that were mentioned by the board members in their questions and comments. So I think that those asterisks, if you will, sort of reflect where we heard the board thought this was an important one. So the first is service quality and reliability, making sure that our transit services meet our performance standards as far as on-time performance, reliability, cleanliness, and customer service. Cost effectiveness, making sure we're achieving the best value for our public dollars and controlling and predicting our operating costs, and avoiding redundancies where we can, and prioritizing efficiency. Next slide. The third is accountability and performance management. So defining clear and concise performance metrics, and then having penalties and incentives to help make sure that our contractor is meeting standards. And for those of you who've been following along, you know that this has been somewhat of a challenge, particularly as this contract, the older it gets, the more challenging it's been to hold our contractor accountable to KPIs. Next slide. Workforce recruitment and retention. This has been a huge issue for us over the last few years. And it goes back to the point I was making about being out of touch with the labor market with regard to the rates. The way this works is we pay TransDev a rate. We can't dictate how much they pay their staff, but if their rates are set so low that they are losing money, which we understand they are, it obviously puts downward pressure on them to cut costs where they can. And we think it's been a major issue in terms of our inability to maintain to retain and recruit a good workforce the last few years. Next slide. And safety and risk management. Obviously there's a huge safety issues in everything that we do, not just for our riders, but also for our bus operators and for the traveling public, people in private vehicles, bicyclists, pedestrians, et cetera. So clearly, always a huge priority for us. Number 6, flexibility and scalability. This is really recognizing that we are in a period of uncertainty, particularly with regard to future funding levels. And so we want to make sure we're structuring the contract so that if we need to reduce service, if we have the opportunity to expand service, we're not getting penalized or having to put ourselves in a position where we have to renegotiate the contract in an unfavorable situation. Number 7, innovation and efficiency. This is just, again, how can we be efficient and innovative in the use of our services? I would say our prior contract was extremely directive, very, very prescriptive about what we wanted to see as far as how the services are operated. But we think that by scaling back some of that, there may be opportunities for a contractor to do things more efficiently and give them the opportunity to do that. Next slide. And then regulatory compliance and reporting. This is not a big deal to you all, but it's of course a deal to us because we have a lot of regulatory compliance and reporting requirements. And we want to make sure our contractor is helping us with that. So those are the 8 criteria that, priorities that we've identified. And as I mentioned, the first 4 that have the asterisks are the 4 that the board members really identified as important to them during our last board meeting. And so if we go to our next slide, we'll talk about evaluation criteria next. And the evaluation criteria are important because this is how we react to what's important to us, right? We want to evaluate the proposals we receive based on what's important to us. And so we've drafted these proposed evaluation criteria to really, again, to reflect what we think our priorities are. They're summarized here, but if you look in the packet, there's a lot more detail on each of these. If you look at pages 10 and 11 of your packet, you'll see the details with regard to that piece. So qualifications and experience of the firm, thoroughness and understanding their understanding and approach to the project. Do they understand what our needs are? Are they being responsive to it? And then the key personnel. By key personnel, meaning who are the local general manager, shop manager, safety manager that they're proposing. Do we think these are qualified, competent people who really become an extension of our staff? There's 5 key positions that those are the ones that essentially will be grading the proposer based on those individuals for that category. And then we have the cost proposal, the price proposal. Is it clear? Is it reasonable? One of the things we've learned is that sometimes some of these contractors have a known reputation for sort of offering a very low price, but then it turns out that it's kind of like when you buy a plane ticket and then you realize you've got to pay extra for your luggage and pay extra for this and that and the other thing. So we want to make sure we don't have that we have a price proposal that is clear with no hidden fees as well as reasonable. And then retention and recruitment of the qualified workforce. 10 points are required under state law for any contractor that agrees to retain the existing workforce for 90 days. So we've included that here because we have to, and then we've added an additional 5 points for contractors that demonstrate, what they can do going above and beyond to ensure that we can retain and recruit a qualified workforce. That's again just a way of emphasizing the importance of this for us. And then creative and innovative solutions for efficiency. Again, our last contract being very prescriptive, we want to try to incentivize folks to look at ways in which they could reduce our costs without compromising on our service. So next slide, next is our scope of work. And, yes, there was a 50-page attachment in your packet. I do apologize. You don't need to give us your comments right now. If you have comments, again, this will be going to the board on November 17th. So we've got the next week and a half or so. If you can get us any comments that you have, we'll be happy to address those. I don't want to go through the entire 50 pages, but I did put together a couple of quick slides just to kind of highlight some of the things here's kind of how it's organized and also some of the things that are different. So we did completely restructure this. So if you look at the old contract, it's structured completely differently. It kind of mixes a bunch of things together. So we tried to really break it into different sections, and this table has the page numbers for each of those sections. So just when we're walking through them, the first section is what are YoloTD's duties and responsibilities? And the goal here is to just be really clear about what our job is and what their job is, so that there's no room for confusion or mutual finger pointing about who's supposed to be doing what. The next four sections are all about what the contractor's duties and responsibilities are, and they're organized by operations, which is transit operations, facilities and maintenance, customer service, and information technology. And what's different, just to highlight a few things that are different in each of these sections, under operations, of course, we have now our Beeline microtransit, which is a core part of our service. And one of the things we've realized is without having a lot of details in our contract about what our expectations are, it's been a source of, it's been challenging to manage. For example, like contractors are expected to use tablets, right, to perform this service. And that's not something that was explicit in our last contract. So we've added, a lot of additional language there around microtransit. Battery electric vehicles, of course, are now part of our fleet under facilities and maintenance, and they're going to be a growing part of our fleet. So making sure that our contractor is equipped and, prepared to be servicing battery electric vehicles. Customer service. We've added sales of passes and tickets. This is a weird thing that I don't know if you all know this, but we have two separate customer service in-person offices here at YoloTD. One that we staff, YoloTD staffs to sell passes and tickets, which, as you can imagine, very few people still come in person to buy passes and tickets. But for those folks who are unbanked, or for whatever reason need to come in and pay with cash, we have to have a customer service office for them. But then our contractor does all the other customer service duties. So we are proposing to consolidate those. This is a typical practice. Again, that will just save resources in terms of not having duplicative staffing for customer service. And then for information technology, this is an entirely new section that wasn't covered in our last contract. It was kind of woven throughout, but we've made this a new section and shifted some responsibilities to the contractor, particularly for maintenance of our vehicles, that their maintenance staff should be able to do some basic maintenance on the equipment, the IT equipment in our buses. Next slide. We're almost through. A few more things that are in our scope of work: reporting and record retention. That's pretty basic. KPIs, penalties, and performance incentives. This is, we did have this in our prior contract. However, we didn't actually have any incentives. We only had penalties. We had a whole bunch of them. We had a list of 45 different things they could be penalized on, most of which were very difficult to track and not very important. And the penalties themselves were very small. So what we've done is we've got fewer KPIs, we've got larger penalties for the KPIs we did keep, and we also have incentives in place for achieving those or exceeding those KPIs. So that's a pretty big shift. We also have an entirely new section on the management, retention, reassignment, and removal. We've had big challenges with retaining and filling vacant management positions that are on our contractor side, and it does create real challenges for our service. So we've created a new section there to enhance, if you will, what their responsibilities are to try to minimize turnover and fill vacancies. And then lastly, we have a miscellaneous section, which is just what it sounds like. No big surprises in there, just a lot of random stuff. And then finally, options. So in our last contract, we had 20, that's right, 20 options. We now have just one. That option is, for many years, we have allowed Dignity Health and their Yolo Adult Day Care Health Center, ADHC, I'm getting the acronym wrong, to piggyback on our contract with TransDev. So essentially, if Dignity Health chooses to, they can hire our contractor at the same hourly rates that we that we get basically for similar service, which is kind of similar to our paratransit service. So it's a way of, I think, streamlining procurement for ADH, for Dignity Health, and for giving them access to kind of leverage the rates we have in our contract. So that's something that we are in conversation with them about whether or not we want to do it again. And that's something that is TBD at the moment. So before we wrap up, that's everything I'm going to say about the RFP itself, but I do want to say a bit about the fiscal impact, because I know that's something that is on everyone's mind, including my own. So I want to start by acknowledging that there are significant cost increases likely in this new contract, given the age of our older contract. We don't know the magnitude of those increases until we test the market. So given this uncertainty, how do we control costs with this new contract? So the contract is, and this is true of our current contract as well. This new contract will be structured around two types of costs, fixed and variable costs. Fixed costs don't change. There are things like management fees, and we need to have a safety manager, regardless of how, and a shop manager and a customer service manager. We need to have all of these positions regardless of how much service we're running. Things like preventative maintenance on our vehicles, safety and training programs, those don't change. And it's a relatively small part of the contract overall. The majority of the costs of the contract are variable costs that go up and down based on service levels. So we pay for miles of service and we pay for hours of service. For fixed route, we pay for both. For paratransit and microtransit, we just pay for hours of service. And so these are those variable costs that we can float up and down depending on how much service we want to operate and how much service we can afford to operate. Next slide. So how are we getting at that? This question of, increasing costs. Well, as part of our short range transit plan, we do have 3 scenarios under development. The first is the base case scenario, which assumes that we're able to continue our current level of service, but so we're just essentially reshuffling those resources to change our service, change our services. So it's not the same service, it's just the same level of service. And then we have an increased service scenario, which is, obviously if we have additional funding that becomes available. And then a reduced service scenario, which is what we can, that is where we can start to pull some levers, depending on how high the new operations costs are with our new contract. And if we see decreases in our available funding levels. So that's really where we have, where the SRTP helps us identify a roadmap for managing future cost increases. So all 3 of these scenarios will be presented to the board and included in the final SRTP. The base case scenario, they already saw a first draft of it in July, and based on some of their feedback, we've gone and made some revisions, and those revisions, will be presented to the board in November. And then the increased service scenario and reduced service scenario, we believe will be coming to the board in December. So they'll have a chance to see those. And then we're thinking that final action will be on the SRTP early in 2026. And then last, I just wanted to remind that we also have these budget workshops that we've been working on. We have 2 more workshops planned. Cost allocations in YoloTD's budget. This is how do we take our costs and allocate them to our different funding sources. This was supposed to be scheduled for November. Our director of finance, Chas Federico, is now out on medical leave. We're not sure how long that's going to last, so we're having to postpone that for now. But one way or another, we are going to do our 3rd budget workshop in February of 2026, which is options for increasing revenues. This is where we'll be looking at options for increasing sales tax measure or passing a sales tax measure, looking at what some of the potential scenarios are for toll revenue in the future from our new toll lanes, and also looking for board direction on codifying how we allocate TDA, how we divvy up federal funding with Unitrans. That's where we kind of want to present, here's all the different options on the table, and really get direction from the board about how they want us to proceed as far as exploring increasing our revenue sources. So that concludes my presentation. Sorry, that was a lot of talking from me. I hope it was helpful, and I look forward to hearing your questions and feedback.
I have a quick question on just that last slide. The budget workshops, are those at the regular board meetings?
Yeah, the first one was a standalone, workshop. And the feedback we got from the board was that they want us to make them part of the regular board meetings in the future.
Okay, so the one in February just put down for the regular board meeting.
That's right. That's right. Unless we end up in some sort of a jam where we can't, where we have other time sensitive items and we can't do it, then we'll go to the board and ask them if they want to postpone it or schedule a special meeting. But that's currently what it is on the long range calendar.
Got it.
Are there questions or feedback on the transit operations RFP? Okay, well, as I mentioned, if you have any comments for me, we have about, it'd be great to get them this week. If you have any questions on any of this, if you get them to me at the end of the week, that'd be great. Otherwise, I would say no later than like end of day next Tuesday, so that we can make sure it's reflected, in the packet that goes to the board. That packet will be going out a week from Friday. So thanks everyone for listening.
Hey.
And, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I do
Sure.
have a question. So,
Sure.
sorry, I did read through most of the item that you guys put together. So thanks for sending that out ahead of time. So I do have just a question, like, so the retention and the state law says basically it's 10 points for 10 extra points if they take on the existing employees and their collective bargaining agreement. So does, I mean, to me, that's most of what a cost, most of the costs involved in running transits, or at least my little knowledge, it would seem to be that's most of the costs. So what leeway does the new operator have to adjust costs or to compete with each other if if the basic assumption is, hey, you've got to take over the existing employees, the existing collective bargaining agreement, it seems like everybody would have pretty much the same costs going in. Any background on how different operators would be able to come in with different numbers for our costs for vehicle miles and hours, and then the fixed cost also? I don't know, just kind of, although I've been on the tech, I haven't been a part of that at all.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I can tell you what I have heard from our consultants, although I can't speak from firsthand experience. I mean, so one point of clarification, the state law, requires us to give them 10 points if they agree to offer first right of refusal to those employees to stay on for 90 days. It does not separately, state law requires them to honor the union contract. So those two things are a given, but it's not necessarily given that everybody wants to stay, right? So they have to offer first right of refusal, but it's not a given that all those positions are going to be filled. And I don't know that unless it specifies in the union contract how many positions there will be. I think that they could potentially reduce the number of positions if they see efficiencies in terms of how they do things. So for example, customer service, can they flexibly staff customer service during, off-peak hours where somebody who's also a road supervisor is also doing double duty as customer service, for example. So they may be able to find some ways to, again, especially if we're a bit less prescriptive about certain things, that they may be able to get away with reducing some positions. And because they only have to retain people for 90 days under state law, they could also then hire everybody back, but then reduce the number of positions after 90 days, for example.
Interesting. Okay, got it. So are we thinking, so we did renew, sorry, I'm trying to think of this. We've renewed this current contract one or two times.
Just one.
Was that it? YTD's option, or I assume that's our option.
Yeah, it was at our discretion, yep.
Okay, is the expectation that the new contract is gonna cost more than the existing contract?
In terms of the rates that we pay for miles and hours, absolutely, and probably higher fixed costs, as well, yeah.
Yeah. Knowing that we'd probably pay more, I mean, I know you went through a pretty exhaustive explanation. Was there any comment of, hey, let's do another option for another year because it'll be more affordable, or any commentary on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think the problem is, yes, it is an option, absolutely, it's always an option. Or it's not always an option, but we do have, potentially 4 option years on this contract. I will say that I think, the challenges that we're experiencing, we have been experiencing, have been pretty severe, and, I think, and the board members themselves are getting some of the complaints about that. And so I think that there's a desire to say, well, I think we'd rather have a lower level of service if that's what needs to happen, as long as that service is reliable, and higher quality. So we'd rather make sure that people, even if the bus is coming less frequently, or we have to, reduce some hours of operations, but know that the bus is gonna come when it says it's gonna come. So I think that's the kind of where our board is at with this, and staff as well, is that we prefer to kind of reset, and have a higher quality of service, even if it means we have to have less service.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments at this time? Okay. Well, if not, again, I welcome your comments and feedback, and thanks everyone for your time. I guess I'll take it back to Brian for the next agenda item.
All right, next agenda item is number 5. So we have Manny, Manfrey Arc, and I think we have another representative from Caltrans who had requested to share with our TAC their newly approved California Freight Mobility Plan. So we were able to put some time aside in the agenda to allow them to do that. So I will turn it over to Manny and take it away from there.
Hi, Brian. I was waiting for Kaylin to join. I don't see her online yet. Can you give me a quick second here? Let me give her a call. Sorry.
While Manny is working on that, we may as well jump ahead to item number 6, which is to approve TAC meeting calendar. So, Janine, that last page on there it is, page 61 of the packet, right? Under discussion. So after this meeting, 2026 would have February 17th, then May 4th, then September 15th, and then December 1st as our forthcoming schedule. So, does this require a motion and approval? Yeah. Okay, so what we'll be looking for, is everybody able to see what those dates are in their packet? And so
Say
then
those again.
What was that?
Say those again, please.
February 17th,
Tuesday. Okay,
Monday, May 4th, Tuesday, September 15th, Tuesday, December 1st,
okay.
and would all start at 1:30. At this point, we would be looking for a motion, a second, and then a roll
Alan
call.
Mitchell, City of Winters makes a motion to adopt the schedule as laid out before us today.
Thank you, Alan. Get a second from somebody, please.
I can second.
Todd with Yolo County.
All right, Todd seconds it. Okay, so let's go through our roll call vote. Todd, Yolo County,
Aye.
West Sacramento,
Aye.
Winters,
Yes, aye.
City of Davis,
Aye.
City of Woodland,
Aye.
and UC Davis. Lucas,
Aye. Hey, sorry there, I had to unmute.
no problem.
To the extent that I'm empowered to vote.
Mhm. So we've got, motion carries. And that brings us back to agenda item number 5. Manny, are we reconnected?
I gave Kaylin a call, but she didn't. Is she waiting in the lobby by any chance? She said she was gonna log in.
You just got on right now.
Okay,
Oh.
perfect. Oh, thank you. Apologies about that. I think she thought that she was on at 2:45. And so, yeah.
All right, Kaylin has joined us. Kaylin, if you're able to get situated with your video and your sound turned on, welcome. We appreciate you joining us and giving us a overview of the California Freight Mobility Plan. We're all queued up, I believe. And I think that our clerk, Janine, can give you sharing privileges so that you can walk through your slides yourself.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me I can share this with you all. Hey, you guys see my slides?
Not
Not yet.
Not yet. I'll give it a second. Bandwidth might be. Oh, how about now?
No.
Oh boy. Okay, let me try again. Let's see here.
Everybody has permission to share slides right now. Yeah.
Annie, do you happen to have access to the slides?
I'm looking for them right now. I believe I did email them as well, but I'll look for them right now. Hold on.
I think I lost my connection. I'm sorry.
Oh, I do have them, so I can run the slides. I think. I hope.
Maybe details are.
That'll work.
Great. There they are.
I will run through the slides with you, so you can just let me know when you want the slide advance, and I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kaylin Pacheco. I am the Office Chief for Strategic Freight Planning within the Division of Transportation Planning at Caltrans headquarters. Thank you for having me here today to share a little bit about the Freight Mobility Plan and the work that we're doing. We are in the early phases of updating our plan, but we're just trying to get the word out about the efforts that are going on just to try and collect as much feedback as possible to include in our plan. And if there are any questions throughout the presentation, or we can save them until the end, happy to answer any questions that you might have. Next slide, please.
Yeah, real quick, what's the purpose of the plan, and does it replace an existing plan? What's the, what was the, origins of the need for this plan?
Yeah, and I'll get into that in the next slide, but we do have a federal requirement that we must meet under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We must have a federally approved freight plan in order to utilize our National Highway Freight Program dollars. If we do not have an approved plan, we are not eligible for those funds. And so this is our third update, fourth update of the plan. So we're updating it. It was every 4 years or 5 years, and now it's every 4 years. And the last one was approved in 2023.
Great, thanks.
So, like I just said, under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was passed back in 2021, all states are required to develop a freight plan, and that must be approved every 4 years. There are 17 total elements that we must address in the plan in order for FHWA, or Federal Highway Administration, to sign off on it. So as I said a couple minutes ago, our last one was adopted in September of 2023, and now we're working on our 2027 plan, and that one is due in September of 2027 for adoption. Next slide. So today I'll focus on the current status of our plan development and then the next steps that we're working towards. And I'll share some of the bigger proposed changes to the plan, our outreach and engagement efforts, and I'll also give an overview of how we've been administering our surveys and share some information on some of our responses so far. And then I'll go over the timeline of the project and share some ways that you might be able to help us with our outreach and engagement effort. Next slide. So some proposed changes that we have so far is we are updating our vision statement. We want it to be future focused. We want the language to be clear and concise. We want to make sure that it's inspiring for the reader to read it. And then we want to make sure that our vision statement is purpose driven, and the why of the plan, and making sure that it's necessary and worth implementing. And we also want to make sure that it aligns with our overall state goals and plans. And right now we have 7 goals and goal descriptions, and we're narrowing now those down to 5. And the reason we want to do that is because of some of the overlap in some of the language. For example, we had multimodal mobility separate from connectivity. Well, we would propose joining those together with shared goals and outcomes by combining those. We have economic prosperity, public health, and environmental stewardship. We also have safety and resiliency, and it's just going to help us moving forward to streamline some of our actions and deliverables. And then the final one is asset management. Some of our objectives and the that we're developing, we just want to make sure that they're specific, that they're actionable, that there are measurable outcomes as a result of developing some of these goals and objectives, and that some of them are short term, some will be long term. This is a long range plan. It's updated every 4 years, but we do want to focus on some of those actions that are achievable in the short term. We're also refining our strategies. We currently have 66 strategies within the California Freight Mobility Plan. We're just going through that list right now to see what work has already been done, what work is on the horizon, and potentially looking at some new strategies that we might be able to implement in the long term. We're currently working on our freight modal section. So we have a section written on highways. We have railways, ports, which includes airports, seaports, land ports of entry, and pipelines. And in these modal sections, we'll cover the infrastructure and facilities inventory. We'll do the needs assessment, which covers the condition and performance, freight demand and future growth, safety, environmental, and equity needs, and then finally technology, data, and workforce needs. Next slide, please. So some of the outreach and engagement work that we've done so far has been limited, and that's due to resourcing constraints. Doing the best that we can with the limited number of staff that we have and the resources that we have. So we have taken advantage of a small contract through a consulting firm to help us with our survey instrument, which was developed in Maptionaire. We had a contract that began in May. We only had 2 months, but we were able to develop a public survey and a freight industry survey, and that ran until the end of July. And then on July 15th, and currently running another survey application through our Caltrans engagement portal. We're anticipating that may close in November. We might extend it depending on the number of responses that we get back. We do have some gaps in information, and some demographic information where we need to do some targeted outreach. So we will keep our survey open for as long as we can. We've also met with our California Freight Advisory Committee twice this calendar year. We met in February, but then we met again in July. We are postponing our fall meeting. We're not quite ready to meet with our Freight Advisory Committee, but we anticipate having another meeting in February or March of 2026. We've done some digital outreach and social media campaigns. We just ended the second campaign. We're getting the word out through our social media platforms, and that's gone out on X, it's gone out on Instagram, getting email blasts out just to get information out through our public affairs folks within Caltrans, just so folks are hearing about the efforts going on. We haven't had any targeted industry or public workshops so far, something that we're looking into. But any opportunity that we have to speak at public events, TAC meetings, any meetings that maybe our local agencies, regional agencies have, we're trying to get on the agenda to get the word out. Next slide, please. So for our public responses so far, there's been extensive outreach across California, but where you're seeing the red blobs on the map, those are areas where we've received a significant number of responses so far. So what this graph is telling us is for Maptionaire, this was the campaign that ran from June to July. We had 1,638 total visitors who just looked at the survey. The total number of completed responses was only at 477. We had some folks who started the survey, didn't complete it for one reason or another. So we have collected that data and that information, but it isn't a completed survey response that we were expecting. And then a bounce visitor is somebody who just curious, just gonna pop in, just take a look at the survey instrument, but they didn't complete any of the questions that we asked on the survey. So there are, if you look at the colors on the map, we have had in the more rural areas not as good of coverage. So there are different sectors where we would like to target, at least for freight surveys for the freight industry, but on the public side, it's focusing more on disadvantaged communities, minorities, and we're seeing that in some of the data that we've collected so far, where we do need to do some targeted outreach. Next slide. So for the freight industry survey, we've had a much lower number of responses so far, with only about 30 from our freight industry folks. On the right, you'll see a breakdown of the industries who provided responses, and the majority are coming from the trucking industry. So it helps us see where we need to focus our efforts in the near future. And the way that I think we'll accomplish that is through targeted interviews. Next slide. So some of the critical milestones that we have coming up for the plan between now and December of next year, we will be developing our content for the plan, for the chapters, refreshing data, refreshing maps, and taking the survey results and doing that analysis and building that into the needs assessment of the plan. And then December 2026 through June of 2027, we will start our formal review process. It'll go out for public review during that time period. And then in June of 2027, we will submit it to Federal Highway Administration for review and approval. It does need to be approved in September 2027, but we hope to have that approval in the fall and then release the final version of CFMP in December of 2027. Next slide. So what we're asking is if you have an opportunity to share out any of the survey materials with folks, we do have a QR code available. This takes the individual to our Caltrans public engagement portal, where you have the option to take the public survey, the freight survey. It's also translated into Spanish. So if you have an opportunity to share that out, that would really help our effort as we're developing our plan. We really want to gather views and perspectives from different communities and different freight sectors. So if there's any way that you can share it across your networks, that would really help us reach some of those communities and maybe some industry representatives. With that, that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
The email that went out to us, that Manny sent out, it had a survey participation date by October 31st. Has that been extended a month?
It has,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And one of the reasons for that was we wanted to complete, we originally were going to have a freight advisory committee on November 12th. We are postponing that a few months because we do want to try to fill in some of the gaps where we are missing information for these surveys. But we hope to, I think by the end of the calendar year, we'll probably close it out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Alan, do you foresee any implications of this plan to Yolo County? We've got, three controlled access highways between 80, 505, I-5, and 113. What are these, is this plan expected to become high level, or does it get down sort of into the districts where, there's something, tangible for us to be aware of?
So I think what we want to do is focus on routes where there is a significant amount of freight travel, goods movement, travel, and highlighting that in the plan, because in the event in the future, Yolo County decides to apply for a grant, whether it's a trade corridor enhancement program or there's another funding opportunity, we would like to ensure that our priority corridors identified in the plan do cover various regions of the state.
Do we have any other questions for Kaylin? Not look like it. Well, want to express our appreciation, Kim, for you sharing that with us, and we'll look forward to following the process. Sounds like it's gonna wrap up in 2027, but I imagine you'll have an update for us as you get closer to completion of developing the plan.
For sure. Thank you for the opportunity today. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but happy that I was able to join you guys today. Thank you.
You're free to stay, or you're also free to have the rest of your day, Kaylin. We're just about to wrap up the meeting. But you're free to do as you choose. So that brings us to agenda item number 7, which is long range calendar. Are you sharing that right now?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, good. So we have, the next meeting, we'll have, an update on short range transit plan, focusing more on, implementation. Are we gonna have, any of the proposals from the vendors around that time? Are we expecting that to play a role in this update?
We'll be getting the proposals from the vendors in February.
Okay,
So it's probably, and I think it's like late February, so it's probably gonna be, I don't think there'll be much to update at that point. But we may be able to tell you, how many proposals we've received at that point, but that should be about it.
all right. And then the other item at this point would be any updates from TAC on their intentions for the upcoming federal funding round. And then in May, we'll bring to the TAC our proposed budget and work plan for 26-27. Anybody have any thoughts or comments on the long range calendar? No? Okay, not a talkative group today. Okay, it happens sometimes. So that brings us to item number 8, adjournment. So unless there are any comments or final thoughts anybody would like to share, we will close out the meeting. Last call for any comments or thoughts. No? All right, well, it is 2:37 and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.